So remember last video where I said I'm putting this whole shop thing on hold? Yeah, that. I'm going to the markets.
If you're thinking of selling at a market, this video will give you a good idea of what's involved. I should also point out this was my first market, so I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
And here is what I have to sell so far. 5 of these tea boxes, 4 of these utensil holders, 5 of these cookbook stands, 3 serving boards, and 9 coasters. And while it's a start, it's also a 3-day long market. 3 days of selling stuff. I need to make some more stuff.
So over the next 8 weeks, I spent the majority of my time making new pieces for the event.
Oh man, this poplar gum is awesome.
I was trying to be as creative as possible with the different ideas, but the whole time everyone was just saying, focus on chopping boards. To be fair, they were right.
One of the most interesting things that this whole process is teaching me is about building at a pace. Most of the projects that I do are personal projects and I can take my time with them, but now that I have a deadline to get a lot of stuff done in a very short amount of time, I'm having to work quick. And behind me is a mess that I'm trying to hide, but I've got to keep going.
At this stage, I was about a month out, so I started focusing on the stall itself. This varies from market to market, but in my case, I had to supply my own furniture and then obviously a way to take electronic payments. And I was also thinking beyond the market to sell myself as a woodworker who takes commissions. After all, this was one of the directions I want to take my business, so the market was a perfect place to network with people who were interested in timber products.
I did a whole bunch of looking around at different options for tables and ways to display products on them. And I was going to buy something, but I had this sheet of plywood lying around and it allowed me to sort of create the tables that I want for the space that I have, my 2x2 square. So hopefully this is going to work out better, even if it's a little bit more expensive. I am back at Officeworks for like the 5th time. At this stage, I basically have shares in the place. It's the day before the market, so a little bit of a time crunch here. I've just realized I have very little table space. So I'm gonna be displaying these serving boards upright. So I need to make a few single stands to hold these in this orientation. All right, time's up. I can do no more.
And so, with 2 days to go before the event, I made some stuff. And this isn't even all of it. The other reason I've got everything out is so I can start assigning a price to every item. During the show, I'm probably going to adjust them depending on whether things do or don't sell, but at least now I can get a baseline of what everything should cost.
Look at that. That was not done on purpose. Whew.
Finally, I had everything I needed. I was ready. But also I wasn't. You see, I'd always assumed vendors at markets were there solely to make money. Period. They would make a thing, go to the market, and sell said thing. But instead, what I discovered was an entire community of people who just loved craft and being around other makers, and I was not prepared for that. I mean, of course, money making is a big part of it. And there was one lady who on the first night was in tears because she hadn't sold anything. Don't worry, she absolutely nailed it the next day. But other than that, money hardly came up in conversation with the other vendors. They just wanted to talk about their craft. And then on the other side, the customers, there was only a handful of times where I felt like I was in some kind of salesy interaction.
Yeah, right.
I met so many people and heard so many stories. Boat builders, botanists. There was one guy who had a history of bringing South Africans into Australia through employment in his company. And he was so proud of that. It was just amazing to hear all of these stories. So to give you, presumably someone who's thinking of selling at a market, some value from this video, here's some takeaway points from my experience. The sign was a real hit for 2 reasons. Firstly, anyone who saw my products read the sign. I could see them walking past, looking at the products, turning away and catching the sign, and they'd stop and read it. And there was just enough text so that they could scan it quickly, but the intrigue was conveyed. It also highlighted that the wood came from Tasmania. So I met a lot of Tasmanians, and this is sometimes referred to as a call to tribalism. In that same vein, business cards and portfolios are a must. I sold around half of my products, but gave away 40 plus business cards. So in theory, over the next 6 months, I should see some work come back in based on those interactions. And also having a small booklet or portfolio of your work so you can say to potential clients, look, this is what I do as my day job. This is what we can achieve if you decide to work with me later on. It was a really good idea too.
Just made my first sale.
Consider whether you're a socialite or not. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a salesperson or extrovert to do this kind of thing, but consider that you are selling your brand as well as your products. There will be some customers who really want to engage with you. And if you can meet them on that, you're going to have a lot more fun and you're going to expand your network. And if you aren't that way inclined, maybe chug a few Red Bulls before you get started and tell your friends and family that you'll be locked in your bedroom for a few days after the event. All I'm saying is, if socializing drains you, just be prepared for a taxing event. And lastly, know your value, price your work accordingly, and try to stick by it even if you aren't making sales. The one story that's going to stick with me from this market forever is about this old lady who was interested in buying my end grain chopping board. This was the most expensive piece on my table, and obviously I wanted to sell it, but I had no expectations that I was going to. It was more of a showcase of what a potential client could get if they worked with me in the future. Heaps of people came through, gave it a rub, told me it was good and left, and that was okay. But this lady just kept going on about how much she liked this piece. She was at the store for ages talking to me. Then all of a sudden she starts saying she has to have it, and I'm starting to get excited. I could see her internal struggle, but I held strong on my price and didn't budge. For context, this is an end grain chopping board. Days of work, and I was selling it for 250 Australian dollars. To say it was cheap is an understatement, but $250 in a single purchase at a market, from what I'd heard, was a bit of a big ask. Eventually, she took my card and said she would think about it, and I was gutted. I thought she was gonna take it, and instead, she walked off. But later that evening, after I'd gotten home after the market, I got a phone call.
I just had a call from someone who at the market was considering buying that big end grain chopping board. She was sort of umming and ahhing, didn't know if she wanted to take it. She's just called me now to say that she's gonna pick it up tomorrow. That's my big sale. I actually wasn't expecting to sell this, so that's awesome.
And you know, selling a higher price item like that really reminds you that you have a skill and it's valuable. I also want to say a very big thank you to all the friends and family who came out to say hello. Dainsy, Dave, Dale, Dan. I know a lot of people whose name starts with a D. Josh. These are all local guys in the industry and they took time out of their day to come and say hi, and it means so much. We have an amazing community here. And just like that, I was back in my workshop with the mess I'd left behind 3 days ago, ready to get started on a new project. But before that, I need to tell you all this story.
So remember last video where I said I'm putting this whole shop thing on hold? Yeah, that. I'm going to the markets.